Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday the 13th. Me being a horror fan, it's a cool day when we actually have a Friday the 13th. Typically, I would not be doing, well, interviews in the middle of the day on a Friday, but due to some COVID protocols, I find myself with some time, and I'm so fortunate that my guest today also had time, so everything just kind of synced up, and I'm super stoked to be able to talk to her about her show. But before we get to that, as I always do with these live streams, let me make sure that everything's doing what I want it to do. And usually, if I wait enough, oh yes, oh, there we go. So it's perfect. Everything's doing what I want. And yeah, hopefully you're having a nice Friday. And as best as you can. I know here in Seattle, Washington, there was something in the news this morning about, I think, not only Washington but Oregon and California are talking about having folks quarantine for 14 days if you come visiting from another state, just because the numbers are getting so crazy with COVID here on the West Coast. And that's, I understand it. It's alarming to me. I have not dug into the details of it. I might be doing that later just to kind of find out more information for myself. But yeah, we're just doing the best we can with what we got. And so what I have coming up, speaking of that, is tonight, provided that the windstorm they're talking about doesn't actually happen and knock my power out, I have the Fun Table Sessions, which is round 15. We have Mike Gruel from Georgia, who will be joining us from Mike's Drum Tracking. And we have Shar Tupper from Metal Titans up in Vancouver, British Columbia, wonderful photojournalist. And we also have Sony Voodoo, who's here locally, who is a performance artist and music person and everything else. So those are my three scheduled guests, and that starts at 7 p.m. Pacific tonight. So if you want to hang out and just kind of shoot the breeze with us like we typically do, and sometimes people get into the chat and we interact with that. It's very, very laid back, and it's kind of supposed to be a nice way to just unwind, take a breath, and chop it up with some fellow creatives. And on Monday, we have part 2 of the interview with the Soap Girls from South Africa, and that's going to be really early on the Pacific Standard Time here, which is going to be 7 a.m. Excuse me, I don't know all this stuff's going on. At 7 a.m. on Monday, so that will be definitely saved to my YouTube and my Facebook channels for people that want to see it later. Of course, if you're over in Europe or over in South Africa, then you can see it because it'll be evening time over there. And that's kind of what's coming up. As I've mentioned before, I have a lot of things going on with my own day job schedule, which may be flip-flopping to a night schedule. So that's why I've been kind of hesitant to book anything too far out, because I just don't know what my own schedule is. I hate scheduling something and then having to cancel it or reschedule things. If I don't have to do it, then I don't. So, but here we are on Friday, and let's get to today's interview. My guest today is an actress, musician, composer, and director of content and partnerships for OML. Her new series, Dating in Place, recently debuted on OML on Revry. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts virtual studio, Yaz. And let's bring her in.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. This is a great setup, man. I dig it.
Cool. Yeah. No. Thank you so much for joining me. I love the fact that I can interview creatives such as yourself during this time, and and to be completely honest, it's been really quite a bit of a lifeline for myself. That everything that happened before the pandemic hit, it's like, oh, I'd be out there at shows and photo pits and everything else, and then that all came to a screeching halt, like for lots of creative folks. And so at least the technology medium is allowing me to connect with people like yourself.
Yeah, I dig it. I dig it.
Cool. So let's kind of start off with Dating in Place, and I want to kind of talk about OML and some other kind of things too, because my audience is going to be from all walks of life, and it's going to be something where they could be music people or theater people or even craft beer people, because I'm into craft beer. I mean, all kinds of different things. But when I saw Dating in Place, it really struck a chord. It's probably partially because of the pandemic and how it's set, but also that what I liked was that you're watching two people who, it's not just said, well, they're in a lesbian relationship. It's just two people trying to connect. So can you kind of talk about how the brainchild, how this started, and how the process was going?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all kind of got slapped in the face around March, right? Everyone was living their life, and I mean, I remember I'd gone on a hike. I'm so lucky to live in Los Angeles, where I live, in nice weather and beautiful hiking trails. And I was on a hike with some friends, and one of my friends was like, we really should be paying attention to the coronavirus. And I was like, okay, and just hiked away. You know what I mean? I was like, don't be stupid. Like, it's fine. We'll be fine. And then obviously March hit, and I did a little bit more reading and realized obviously how serious it was. And what I found was that because there was so much unknown, everyone was spending an exorbitant amount of time online, and everyone was really scared. Everyone was really scared. And I was also really scared, being a big believer in following the science and understanding that science didn't have a clue, man. Like, they didn't really know what was going on. And that is scary to me. When the people with the beakers and the lab coats don't know, I'm like, all right, I'll just stay indoors. So with that being said, there was like this negative, scared undertone in the language that everyone was using online. And I was like, I think that we all need to take a beat and understand that there is a good chance that we're going to be okay, and that we need to adjust to life, potentially indoors for a minute. So I thought, what better way to help out than to create a comedy to, kind of show that life can go on, and that there are different ways to communicate and different ways to be with people and all that kind of stuff. So that was where it came from. I just saw that people needed a distraction, and I was like, I know how to do that.
Okay, yeah, and it's what's for those that haven't seen it yet, that the episodes are, you feel like you're right there with the characters. And again, it's partially just because we're all going through the same thing right now in this pandemic, but at the same time, the technology use is there in the show, and the humor of what happens sometimes when you're trying to talk to someone virtually is in the show. And it's set up so well that I think in my review I was talking about that I saw the first 3 episodes initially, that it's felt like I just watched one episode, which was a huge positive to me. It was so interesting to me that I just kept wanting to watch and keep wanting to watch more of it. So how did you get the cast involved? So were you actually not together then, the way it was shot?
We've never been in the same room.
Okay.
It's nuts. Like what we ended up pulling off, and what what we did was really, really crazy. But it was one of those things where I was like, I'm actually high risk for COVID. And my acting agent and everyone kind of reached out saying that we don't know what's going on and how everyone's going to be proceeding. And then when people were like starting to go back out and doing smaller auditions, I was like, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable to do that, and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I don't know when I'm going to get to act again. And then I was like, well, I have enough technology in my home. I'm sitting in my studio that I built in my closet, which is appropriate for a queer person. And I was like, I can create enough of the technology between myself and the people that I know to be able to film something. But I mean, honestly, it's one of the biggest hurdles when it came to writing the story was, how do you make that interesting? How do you make just a conversation back and forth between 2 people interesting for that long? So it's quite a compliment that you said that you felt like you only watched one episode, because that means I did it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You absolutely did. The whole team of making it compelling and interesting, and I wanted to know more, so I want to keep staying engaged with what was going on.
Right.
And I think also I just never even thought about during this time about how do people date?
Well, I mean, I guess I was chatting with a friend of mine the other day who they'd just gone on a date, and both her and the person that she went on a date with had both just gotten COVID tested. For other things, for work or whatever, and then hadn't been around other people, and they were like, oh wow, we both have negative COVID tests, so we're actually safe to be around each other. I was like, wow, COVID tests are the new safe sex, I guess. I don't know. yeah, I don't know how you date, and I don't know. I mean, I'm every day I wake up, I'm grateful for the fact that I'm married and I don't have to think about that anymore. Um, but honestly, like in this time, I do know there are people, even in our building, young professionals that like they say that sometimes they go days without actually talking to someone, and they haven't literally had someone touch them for months, and that's a hard thing to have to deal with. And so yeah, that was why there were so many parts of this story, and it really develops in episode 6 to 10, which will be coming out soon, um, where we really get into dealing with the fact that these two women don't get to touch each other. They just have to learn how to have this relationship, you know, and also kind of trust. It's pretty crazy to think that two people could potentially fall in love and have never actually been around each other.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. Back in like the maybe mid '90s, mid to late '90s, when the whole like AOL instant messenger had just come out, and so the whole distance relationship started to kind of build up. And so, if someone's ever gone through that aspect, then they might be able to relate a little bit to what's going on now.
Right.
But there is that huge trust factor. There's a huge like, well, what's this person doing now when I'm not, talking to them on the phone or chatting with them? What are they doing? Especially if you start seeing stuff through social media, and all kinds of other factors start playing into
Yeah.
how it can kind of go against you.
Yeah, I mean, long distance relationships, especially since the inception of, like you said, instant messenger and the internet and stuff, it's really prevalent, and it's especially prevalent in the queer community. So
Mm.
I guess, the dating pool is a little bit smaller, or a lot smaller. I don't know. So a lot of people, I know a lot of people that have had relationships and dated online, and
Mhm.
and how do you do that? How do you maintain that true honest connection with someone when you're not with them? Is it possible? Is it better? I don't know. That's what I wanted to explore, you know.
Yeah, no, I remember back to when I was working as a teacher that our department head had met her husband. I don't even think it was necessarily online. It may have been through like a classified ad or some kind of personal ad kind of a situation. And at that time, back in the early '90s, people were like, "What?" I mean, it just
Mhm.
sounded so crazy. But now it's like, yeah, it makes perfect sense that there's so many people that I've met through some other kind of online technology connection. But at the time, it was like, aren't they like a creep or a weirdo? Aren't you going to get murdered
Man,
or something?
it's so crazy how that's changed, right? Like, and
Uh-huh.
you think about that and think about how, dating apps and things like that have really allowed you to find people that have similar interests to you. Because, like, say you live in a small town and there aren't people that are into the stuff that you're into. So then are you just meant to couple with someone that, you know, that you've got nothing in common with? That's insane to me, just for the idea of, not doing something a little different. I don't know. I obviously have never shied away from doing anything a little different. So
Yeah, no, and I think what you had said earlier too is really interesting about during this time and with the show about some people have gone months without having touched another human being in any
yeah.
way, and I had to actually think about it when you said that. I think I'm one of those people, um, because I live by myself, so and I've been really smart. I tend to lean towards the science side of things, so if it's going to be like being around my parents or family or friends or
Right.
anybody else, coworkers even, it's like I don't want to be responsible for someone else either getting it or dying from it or what have you. I'm moderate risk myself. I'm not low risk,
Yeah.
so I have to think about myself all the time. So
I have to say, and this probably won't make me too popular, but I do think that your outlook and potentially my outlook has probably got a lot to do with how we were brought up. I just think it's kind of manners, right? Like I'm trying not to put anyone else at risk, and I'm hoping that you're not trying to put me at risk because I care. It's a two-way street, and um, I'm petrified with the holidays coming up. People, college kids gonna go home from college to their parents and stuff like that. I'm just like, don't you guys read the news? I don't know.
yeah, no, I hear you because it's like I mentioned in my intro that here in Washington State, it's getting scary. The
I heard
numbers,
that.
yeah, the numbers are getting really really scary.
Dude, 160,000 cases yesterday. That's like, my parents live in Melbourne, Australia. Melbourne, I don't know if they took the virus as seriously as they should have when it first kind of became prevalent. New Zealand obviously did an incredible job. And I feel like people in Australia were kind of looking at New Zealand and they're looking at Australia and going, what's wrong with us? Like, why aren't we that good, kind of thing. But then when it started to get serious, and I think Melbourne locked down for 5 months and now has 0 cases, and they're walking around and they're going into summer and they're going to be able to spend that time with their families and do all that kind of stuff. And, you know, taking it seriously, taking the lives of their citizens seriously. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's I was just talking with another guest recently about how this is supposed to be a time where you take one for the team so that a year from now you can go back to what you love doing.
Right, exactly.
And some people get it and some people are in the middle and some people absolutely understand what they're supposed to be doing but choose not to.
Yeah.
And
that's hard. It's hard to be able to for me, I try to just practice the love and tolerance for everybody. And I really realized that, like, I can't control other people. I can only control myself. So I know there are some people that love to get into it with people. Specifically in New York, I've seen like a lot of like mask shaming where people will like yell at people that aren't wearing masks. I'm just the like, I haven't really left my house much, but like if I go for a walk or whatever, if I see someone without a mask, I just cross the street. I'm like, I'm not fussing with you. I don't need you to know my opinion. So I'm not going to change yours. So what's the point?
yeah, and it's interesting too because it's something where like if I think I use the analogy like if I go outside and I see somebody, I don't necessarily know if they're religious, if they're not religious, just by seeing them. But
Right.
because of what we're dealing with COVID,
Huh.
I have a pretty good idea where you stand as soon as I see you.
Isn't
With
that
some,
crazy?
yeah, with something, without
Yeah.
something. Early on, for me being Asian, then I had some pretty nasty things said to me just because of me being Asian. And I've talked about that before. So it's just, yeah, what a fucked up time.
You know what? It really has brought out the worst in it's brought out the worst in everyone, but you know, like when it comes to being number one, America is number one at being the worst. You know? And I think it's all fear. And that's where I really try to look at everybody's behavior and understand that most of it is motivated in fear. And, you know, I try to have empathy for that rather than being mad. Because when you're afraid, I know how I act when I'm afraid. So, like, you know, even though I don't understand how anyone can look at you and be like, well, this is your fault. Like, I don't get it, man. I don't get it. But, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And I unfortunately, I'm the type of person that if you catch me on the wrong day and the wrong time, that I'm not going to take the high road, which I should. I'm going to potentially say
You
something
can't
back.
win every time.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes things just happen, they come out, and then I might feel bad about it later, but then I don't see that person. So I mean, it's like whatever. On the flip side, like I've also mentioned during the time of doing virtual interviews, that I've always been looking for silver linings during this time. I think everybody is, and there have been some. Again, getting a chance to talk to someone like yourself and being able to do these things and seeing that, in some ways, even though we were just talking about such a division and in some cases a hatred, that on the flip side of it, there's a lot of people that we're not that far apart. And
Right.
when you talk to them, they're not way over on the right or way over on the left. They're actually closer to the middle. And if you just take the time to talk to them, you might actually be able to find out, oh, I thought you were like this, but in reality, that's actually my problem because I try to put that on you and you're not like that. But
I have a theory about this.
okay.
It's my pizza theory, right? I'm a true believer in the fact that if you want to focus on people's differences, you'll find plenty. But the fact is that we all do have much more like alike than what we pay attention to. And so I think that I've never met anyone that doesn't like pizza. Right? Everyone loves pizza. So if we can just like sit down and share a slice, we've already got something in common. It's like, oh, you like pizza? I like pizza. Look at that. We're already friends. Right? So that's how I feel about it. I feel like it's rather than really leaning into the things that make us different. It's like when I walk down the street, I can, like, at face value, I can see why I'm different from other people. But like if we sat down and had a slice of pizza, maybe you'd figure out that, oh, like we have this in common and we have that in common, and oh, you're a really nice person, you know.
I love that, the pizza analogy, because to me it's similar to when, as I mentioned pre-show, that when Alice invited me to go on their virtual tour, that what I have in common with everyone is music. We
Yeah.
all love some sort of music, even if it's a genre maybe that I'm not super into. I'm being a musician myself, and I know you're a musician as well. That
Yeah.
I just kind of, that's where you can break your bread, is talking about something that you have in common.
Yeah.
How many people don't like to see a movie?
Right.
there's
Right.
I can't think of anybody like that, or someone who doesn't like to laugh. I
Right.
haven't
Well,
met
like
that person.
who doesn't drink? I mean, there are probably a lot of people that don't drink coffee in the morning, but like most people wake up in the morning and make a cup of coffee to start their day. We all do the same thing. You
Mhm.
know, we have so much more in common as human beings than what we think we do, and we all want to be loved, and we all want to, you know, feel joy and all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's just about how you choose to look at life. And I'm a I'm a real believer in the fact that, like, I already won the lottery because I'm alive. You know, like, what were the chances it was going to be me? It could have been like any other incarnation of what my mum and dad could have made, but it was me. So
Yeah, no, that's a healthy perspective on it,
yeah,
and again, I've mentioned to people too that no one's at their best during this time. I don't care who you are, what you have at your disposal. No one's used to doing this.
no, no.
um,
And so
and
you have to be forgiving, right?
yeah,
Yeah, you have to be like, all right, well, we're all going through this weird minute, and be forgiving when people kind of act like jerks.
yeah, and that I do try to actually remind myself of that. Sometimes when I want to reply to somebody like via email because they sent something kind of nasty to me, it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, maybe it's this day or this time, or they finally have had
Yeah.
enough or whatever. They're thinking about Thanksgiving and realizing they can't go see their family or whatever it is, and so I have to give them some grace, and hopefully they do the same thing for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that definitely, coming back to, you know, doing things virtually, that's tough. That's tough when you there it seems like there are certain people that wake up in the morning and get on their devices just to spread a lot of hate, and that's a hard one. That's a hard one for me, especially as someone that is somewhat in the public eye and has to maintain a profile. Um on social media, etc., etc. And then when people, like, the comment section, I don't know why I ever look at the comment section. It's hard. It's hard. Do you find yourself doing the same thing? Like, all of a sudden on a post, you're scrolling and you're like, this, and then, you know.
Yeah, no, I've kind of made it a habit now of certain things I just don't do in terms of, like, let's say if we're looking at one social media platform that normally I would kind of read through comments or something on a certain post. I just
Mhm.
don't do it anymore because I know I'm going to find things that I don't like, or tend to get my blood boiling or something of that nature. And at the same time, being a small media outlet up here in Seattle, I've had to turn off comments, like say on YouTube,
Mhm.
because of just random people putting crap on them, and it's kind of like, is this what your life's come to, that you just take all this time to put
Right.
these kind of comments everywhere? It's like, don't you have
Yeah.
anything more productive to do with your life?
Well, and I think to those people, I say, you know, pick up a guitar, man.
Mhm.
You know, maybe if you had some sort of artistic outlet, you would find that life, there isn't that much to be mad about. But I think that it's tough because, especially in this political environment, you know, the artists definitely aren't nurtured, and you know.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that I think some people have learned during this pandemic that how much they do love the arts, and how much they do because they haven't had a chance to go see a show or go
Oh,
participate in something.
yeah.
And I just wish it would translate it over to things that would help support them. So, like, say the clubs here in Seattle, I mean, they're dying. I mean, they
Yeah, same in Los Angeles, man. The like the cornerstone, like the Troubadour and all these places that are legendary. I don't know how they're going to survive, and I don't know how. I think this is definitely something that you'll understand. Like, oh God, music is so ensconced and entrenched in everybody's life, but it's the one thing that no one wants to pay any money for.
Mhm.
And there's this it's honestly, it's a privilege. It's that people take the privilege of music for granted, and they don't understand that these people, like, that maybe people don't understand how long it takes to write a song and then record it, and then, yeah, it's hard. I imagine it must be even harder up north, for the live music venues, because the community is smaller.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it's scary to me to think that I could have a future where half of these places are gone, maybe even more of them for all I know, because it's not just
Right.
the clubs, it's the promoters, it's the bookers, it's every other part of that chain that helps put these things on. And if they don't have the finances, or they don't have the relationships anymore with certain places, then and then you're talking about like national touring acts. If we're talking about bands, let
Yeah.
alone international ones, they're not coming over here for a long time.
No, man. I actually saw there was a politician, and I'm not going to name him because A, I don't remember, and B, he's not worth naming. That he said that he believed that all musicians and artists need to go and retrain in another career that's viable and that can make the money. And I just the narrow-sightedness of that blows my mind, because it's like, cool, okay, so as of today, no one will make music. No one will make entertainment. Let's see how much you enjoy your life.
Right.
It makes me really mad.
I remember that quote, and it's kind of like you say,
Oh,
it's like, okay, why don't you stop being a businessman and go
right.
become a musician then? Uh,
Right, exactly.
yeah, flip it around.
Yeah, I think, and also people really think that it's just as simple as picking up a guitar. As I mean, for one thing, for leisure, but when you're a musician, this is study and work. It's a real craft, and it's like, same as a filmmaker, same as a writer. This is like, it's a lot of work that we put into our art, and then people get to enjoy it, and it filters through their brain and it filters through their bodies, but yet they don't attach a monetary value to it. And a lot of the time artists are seen as bums, and it's like, okay, try, you don't want to live without the art, but you don't want to pay for the art. And I don't it
Yeah,
so it's a real tough one in our society.
it absolutely is. And I know from pre-pandemic times of doing interviews with bands that some of the general music population of fans out there think that everyone's like Beyonce or something, and that they've got all this expendable money. It's like,
Yeah, I don't understand how Beyonce became Beyonce. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand where these rich musicians get their money from, because I know how hard it is for really good musicians and people that are actively touring and doing all that stuff. And I'm talking, these people are living like hand to mouth. So I don't understand how people get crazy rich off music anymore.
that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, because obviously the industry's changed so much that it's like, so are they just getting it from endorsement deals? Are they getting it from other? I don't know.
Maybe that, or maybe, someone, Beyonce's a good example, because she's probably an artifact of the old generation of music, when, record labels were still kind of in play and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And I know there are still labels today, but it all works so differently. And, you're not making money off music sales.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. The whole thing's very confusing to me, which is why I think that I found a home within filmmaking more so than music anymore. I always inject music into everything that I create. So there's a couple of, in this episode 6 to 10, there's some more music that I inject into the show, but um, I definitely have found it easier to maneuver the filmmaking business over the music business. I could never figure the music business out.
Okay, so I'm just curious. So, I mean, what is your music background? Like, how did you start and all that kind of thing?
I started in musical theatre.
Yeah.
I'm a big musical theatre head, and I can't wait to go back and see a Broadway show. Like, there's what's been incredible over this time is seeing all the Broadway people get together and do all these virtual
Hmm.
performances. Every virtual performance, I like burst into tears, and I'm like, oh my god. But yeah, I started in musical theatre, and then I was in my first band when I was 17. and in Australia doing a lot of covers and stuff like that. And then I fell into working with electro DJs and doing in Melbourne, Australia. That music was really prevalent before it kind of hit here.
Mhm.
Kind of that Black Eyed Peas electro style. So I did, I worked with MCs and I was the vocalist with like 2 DJs and all that kind of stuff. And we used to do big festivals. And then I stopped doing all of that and started singing jazz because that's what I love. So, and now I do like the music that I'm making. And I don't even know what I make it for, but it's kind of a hybrid between that. So like an ambient, soulful jazz, I guess.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, so are you basically self-taught? Did you do any kind of lessons at any point in your career?
Yeah, I mean, when I was young, I actually studied musical theatre. Like I went and did a certificate course of that at the National
Okay.
Theatre in Melbourne, and that kind of singing really gets into your body. That classical kind of training.
Mhm.
But when it came to jazz, no, I just did a lot of listening and a lot of loving, and then that was that. I play piano and I play guitar, but only really well enough to songwrite. I would never sit behind or hold one at a live performance. I wouldn't be that audacious because those are pretty special instruments, and I don't want to make it look like make them less than what they are.
Okay.
What do you play?
My main instrument is guitar.
Okay.
I've been playing since, I don't know, like probably when I was 13, 14, my parents bought me one, and I was playing saxophone in the school band before that. And
Ah.
but being a big music nut, I mean, the first concert I saw, I was 9 years old. I saw Kiss.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's been downhill ever since. And my mom was majorly into music, and my dad likes music as well. And my brother's a musician, so we were both jamming on things in our teenage years, listening to a lot of hard rock and metal stuff. But at the same time, I was hearing Motown in the house, and I was hearing easy
Cool.
listening things, and Elvis and the Beatles, and doo wop, and all that. So I really know that foundation helped create what I'm like now in terms of just being really open minded towards music and towards the arts, because my folks were like that. I just heard all kinds of different things.
Yeah, that's cool. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I was one of those people where it actually wasn't even mine. It was my mom's bass. So when I was in high school and college, there weren't a lot of bass players. So it was always like, "Hey, Mark, you got a bass. Why don't you play bass?" So I was like, "Okay." So I was the
I
bass
feel
player.
like this happens to so many guitarists, right? That like
Hmm.
everyone wants to join a band or everyone wants to jam, and it's like everyone's a guitarist, and then they go, "Well, one of us has got to play bass," but like the bass drives the song. Ah,
Yep. Yeah, no, I didn't come to appreciate the bass until much later when I started understanding, just like we said, it drives the song, how it works with the drums,
mm-hmm.
the whole rhythm section. And because initially it was just kind of like I kind of begrudgingly did it because like I'd rather be playing, I'd rather be playing guitar, having the spotlight on me kind of thing or whatever. And then it's like, but then I started to really get into the groove of it. And it's like, wow, this is really
Yeah.
an amazing instrument, and I want to explore this more. And so, and I still actually have that bass here in my home.
Do you ever listen to Esperanza Spalding?
No, I
Esperanza Spalding is like an inspiration for bass players. She's a wonderful jazz vocalist out of Berkeley. And then I think she went on to become a professor at Berkeley.
hmm,
But she's this wonderful, wonderful, really wonderful jazz singer that plays stand-up bass while she sings, and she's excellent. I just for the the joy of it, I recommend checking out her first album when she was still kind of in school, and it was very, very like, it was just very cool to see this teeny tiny woman behind a huge bass and then also just singing so wonderfully. Yeah,
awesome.
she's a real inspiration.
I'll definitely have to check. I wrote her name down, so I can make sure I go check things out. I love, yeah, discovering new music, and just kind of even like with Alice. And I'm not going too far off to the side, but I was just amazed when I first met them 3 years ago that they had 4 different projects under the same collective of Alice. Alice is kind of like electro pop, electro rock stuff, and then they have Alice Underground, which is gypsy swing jazz. And then they have
So cool.
then they have bash rock, which is the three guys from the band, and that's kind of like a punk rock kind of thing. And then they have Mankind is Obsolete, which is like Nine Inch Nails industrial stuff. And so all four of those things have the bulk of the band are in it, or all of the band members are in those things. That they're distinctly different. And at some point, they actually did do three of the acts on the same show.
Oh,
So
wow. Man, they
yeah,
must have been exhausted.
yeah, exactly. So they go out there, do a half-hour set, go backstage, change into whatever the next thing is going to go out there, and then now they're all
Oh,
suited.
that's nuts. But how fun. Well, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about being a true artist is that you don't have to limit your artistry to potentially like to one thing or to what you excel at or whatever. It's like it's all about exploration and figuring out the things that like speak to you or speak through you, which is also just as important.
Right. Yeah. No, it's amazing to know that, and you're right that I don't think I know any artistic-minded people that think in terms of limits. That's the
Yeah,
complete.
no.
Yeah, it's the complete antithesis of that.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me when people are like, well, what kind of music do you like? And I'm like, I love music. And there isn't, and within every genre, you said that you play some heavy stuff.
Mhm.
I'm not a huge listener of heavy metal style music, but at the same time, when I hear someone play that kind of style guitar, to me, all I'm hearing is a classical symphony. And I can hear I hear the parallels. It's not my preferred style of music, but I still find things in it to like to revel in. So like if you're a true musician and if you're a true artist, it's like all of it will speak to you. It'll just speak to you at different levels, I think.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. I know I did a short stint as an audio engineer many, many years ago, and
Oh yeah.
I'm not trained or schooled in it. I just kind of got lucky with that position. But most of our clients for the project that we were working on, they wanted something that was hip hop or rap related as the music part of things in the background, as the bed. And for me, not necessarily being a huge fan of that kind of stuff, I had to start studying it and say, okay, the clients want this, so
Yeah.
how do I create my own original, let's say a 10-second loop that sounds like what they want in this hip hop or rap style? And that's when I started to really start building an appreciation for what's going on, especially when you start
Right.
getting to the good ones in terms of how they're spitting out those lyrics and stuff. And it's
Right. That's
like
it's I definitely think when it comes to art, it's the same as food. Like people, when it's like, what's your favorite food? Yeah, I have a favorite food, but like I love food. So it's just about and I think even for the kinds of food and the kind of art that it don't necessarily speak to me as much, I still have a clear appreciation. Like I'm not a big fan of artichokes, but I understand why they're wonderful.
yeah, I was just thinking back too that like my second or third year of teaching, I had an after school guitar club. So it was where they could learn guitar, or if they just
Cool.
wanted to hang out and just have a safe space to just be into music. That was cool too. And I still remember that I brought in a piece that I was playing on my guitar for the students, and they're like, "So Mark, what Metallica song is that, or what heavy song is that?" And it was actually a keyboard solo from a Faith Hill song. And so I was trying
That's
to,
so cool.
yeah, I kind of set them up in the sense that it's like I knew that's what they were going to think initially, like
Yeah.
all the heavy stuff. It's like, oh, so I pulled out the CD and I played the song for them. They're like, wait a minute, that sounds like what you just played. It's like, yeah. And I said, so do you know who this is? And we went through the whole thing, and I was just trying to open their minds up. It's like I was just like you when I was your age. I was just
Yeah.
huge metalhead. I only wanted to listen to metal, all that kind of thing. But I'm telling you now, if as a musician, if you start opening your mind and as an artist a little bit more, man, your all these other kind of wonderful opportunities are going to open
Yeah.
up for you. And so just kind of, that's my 2 cents to you. If you decide to say, Mr. Ash, you're full of crap, whatever. But maybe one of you or two of you, it'll kind of sink in a little bit. Like, don't dismiss things just because of the type of music it is.
Well, I think that also when we think about that within art, it actually also relates to like human beings as well. So it's like, I I view someone that plays heavy metal, I view them as an incredible artist. And I appreciate what they do and I love that they love it so much. And I think that that's really important. I think it's important that we see other people, we see the differences, and that we like revel in the differences, that we go, oh wow, that's your thing and you love it and that's awesome. It's not for me, but I really respect you for doing you. You know, you don't have to be like me. And like, it's definitely something that I've encountered, I'll say, within creating the kind of content that I create. Um, and something that I learned a long time ago is that like I'm not for everyone. And that's cool, man. You know, that's cool. You don't have to like me. If you don't like my stuff, don't watch it. It's simple as that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that it's, I'm always attracted to people that are passionate about something. And it might be like they're totally into scrapbooking or what have you. And
Right.
I have no interest in scrapbooking, but the fact that you're so into it and want to tell me every
Yeah.
little detail, then I kind of start getting, well, maybe I should get into scrapbooking or something.
Yeah.
I
Or
get
like all
jazzed
of a
about it.
sudden I go, do you know what? You're so passionate about scrapbooking that now I'm going to sit here and listen to you tell me about scrapbooking.
Hmm.
And that makes it makes it better. It's like, I'm so glad that you have scrapbooking to be passionate about. And there's going to be a bunch of people, and that's why it's cool that these dating apps are letting people connect on the things that they care about, right? Rather than like, now I've got to go and date someone that I don't know isn't into scrapbooking. That would suck.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, um, I, 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 I've come across a few coworkers in the past where you'd ask them, say, oh, you know, here we are on a Friday right now. So pre-pandemic times, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And every time it's like, well, I'm not. They're not doing anything. It's like, well, what do you like to do for fun? And
Right.
they don't really have anything. It's like, gosh, have you thought about this or this or
Right.
I'm doing this. Do you want to come along or whatever? And if they keep saying no, it's like, what kind of?
Yeah.
I can't relate to it. I mean, I try to, but I can't.
We're not taught to seek out joy. We're not. We're unfortunately, I feel like in the society we've been taught and we've been conditioned that we have the purpose of furthering the economy, which means that we go to work and we add to the economy by purchasing things and buying food and whatever, but then that's it. And then we go home from our job, that our job is our everything, rather than like the job is just a vehicle to how we pay for shit. And then after that we go and live the life and enjoy it and travel and listen to music and laugh with friends. But I feel like a lot of people aren't taught that. And that sucks, because like when you think about, again, like I say, I feel like I won the lottery. Like, you know, we get one life to live and then all you're going to do is just go to work and go home. I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah, no, I absolutely, I work to live. It's not the other way around.
Yeah, amen. Amen. I'm with you. I'm with you. I think that, and I think that's the real blessing of being an artist, and understanding that like we have something that fills us and enriches us. And you know, we didn't have to be taught that, whereas some people really need to be pointed in the direction of joy a little bit more. And figure it out, whatever it is. If it's scrapbooking, you go scrapbook and you like be the best scrapbooker, man. Like I have a lot of love for you and your scrapbooking.
Yeah, no, again, I'm on the exact same page that I hope someone will, who is in that boat, will try something. And it's okay if it doesn't quite work for you or doesn't resonate with
Yeah,
you, or if you view it as a failure or whatever you want to call it, then move on to the next thing. What else do you want to
yeah.
try? What else just, there's so many things you could be exploring, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to even cost you money.
It doesn't have to cost you money. And also, like, a lot of people, I think, worry about trying things out because they're like, I'm too old to learn something new or whatever. And I read a really cool tweet about like further study or whatever. And the person was like, yeah, it might take you 5 years to learn how to do whatever it is that you want to do. But like in 5 years, you're going to have aged the 5 years anyway.
Mm.
So, you know, just try different stuff. There's no I definitely am like, I'm a big fan of trying out new things and then being like, "Oh yeah, that's not really for me." But at least now I know. I would rather know.
Yeah, and for the most part, I'm in the same boat. I've talked about this on the Alice tour that if we're talking about food, I'll try anything once.
Yeah, or
If
twice, I think. Just in case the first time it wasn't prepared well.
Yeah, activities. There's most things I would try. There's a few things because I don't really like heights, so you'd have to kind of maybe not coerce me, but maybe convince me to rethink it.
Yeah,
And you might get, again, the right day, right time. I might say, yeah, fuck it, I'll try it.
yeah.
Um,
I don't think I would jump out of a plane. I think I'm okay.
and one of my guests, who I actually went to high school with many years ago, he is the CEO of a skydiving gear superstore. So he's done over 6,000 jumps.
Wow.
And that's why I'm like, well, I would consider doing, because I know you have to do it in tandem if you're new. So I said, if you're the one on my back, once we jump out of the plane, I might be
Oh,
okay with it. Just
I think
understand, I'm probably going to soil myself and whatever else happens. But
it, like, even the anxiety it brings me just thinking about jumping out of a plane. I I think maybe I like live on that side of like I'm really grateful for being alive. So the thought of doing something that could potentially push me closer to not being alive kind of scares me a little bit. I'm like, but I get the adrenaline junkie thing because adrenaline's lots of fun. So I get it. But I don't know. I was crazy when I was younger, and now I'm like, okay, I did all my crazy stuff, and now I can just be sensible and maybe boring. I don't know.
Well, and like you were saying earlier too, I think it's true that you can't ever put age on something new. Because even like for myself, I mean, Eclectic Arts didn't exist 10 years ago. And,
Right.
and so it's like, and it just kind of organically happened and it metamorphosized into what it is today. And like I mentioned to you pre-show, I wasn't doing any kind of virtual interviews pre-pandemic or vlogging, any of that kind of stuff. So it was all new. And I just turned 50 this year. So it's like I'm still learning. And
Congratulations.
yeah, I made it.
You made it.
I
It's
made it.
true, man.
I made it halfway. Um, that I always tell anyone that's younger than me, which nowadays is becoming a lot more people, that yeah, if you want to do something, do it now. And
Just do it.
what happened to yesterday? Meaning that just go ahead and start doing it.
Yeah.
And
And look at like now what's cool about what you do is you're connecting with all different sorts of artists and you're able to do it. You don't have to travel, you don't have to there isn't all of these barriers that are being put up. Like literally we shared a message over Instagram and then we were like, yeah, cool, let's chat, man. And
mhm.
it's cool. It's cool. And I will now like I'll go away and I will look up some of the stuff we talked about and that will broaden my artistic scope and vice versa. And you know, who knows, you could become a fan of Esperanza Spalding and that could be rad,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, absolutely. There's that whole kind of 6 degree of separation that starts, moving out from these kind of conversations that we're having with,
Yeah.
and other people that I've talked to, and some of it's been actually quite a bit of it's been brand new people that I'd never met pre-pandemic. So I've done it all versus this, and then the flip side has been there's been some people that I had maybe interviewed, on a tour bus or in a green room or a dress rehearsal area, and then they remembered me. So it's like, oh yeah, I don't mind doing that kind of thing. So it's a good time for someone like me that I can connect with people.
Yeah.
And like you just said, this interview came together very quickly.
Yeah.
I didn't have to say like, what are you doing, in December, and try to get our
Yeah,
schedules.
because what are we all doing? Which is I think that like uh it's all perspective, right? It's like for me, I've looked at the pandemic obviously is very sad and it's definitely hit us economically. But I also think it's given us all an opportunity to slow down. Slow down, take stock, realize that whatever it is that you want to do, you we've been given the blessing of time to do it within the
Mhm.
confines of, obviously if you want to go travel around the world, maybe not so much, but yeah, that's what it's been for me, especially with starting the streaming platform. All of it kind of manifested throughout the pandemic. So I've been busier than I've ever been, but really taking chances on stuff that, you know, you're doing virtual interviews with artists all over the world, and I started a global queer female streaming platform.
Yeah, no, and that's a perfect segue to talk about. So, like when I first saw the press release about OML, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't realize that it existed in another kind of I don't know if it's format, but it existed prior to what it is now,
Yeah.
being a part of Revry. So, can you speak to that? So, I know I'm not the only person out there that's going to be watching this. That's kind of like, what is OML and how did this come to be?
I've only been with OML for about a year. Previous to that, it had been known as a website called One More Lesbian. And it was basically an aggregator and a curator of lesbian content. It was a place where people who were wanting to watch, movie trailers, web series, vloggers could come, and all that content was being put on one website. So you knew that you were going to be able to watch lesbian content without having to sift through potentially things that were sexually explicit and not what you were looking for.
Mhm.
And then I had a web series that One More Lesbian approached my writing partner about, and they put it on their YouTube, and that web series went viral. So as it stands now, the series is called Girls Like Magic, and it has about 45 million views on YouTube. And within the time that because the viral the way that cookies work and everything, the algorithms on YouTube, because of the show going viral, the subscribership on the OML YouTube channel doubled, and now OML on YouTube has over 500,000 subscribers, which is like so awesome.
Mhm.
And basically, I approached the owner and I was like, "What are you doing with this YouTube? You've got this crazy subscribership, but it wasn't really being managed." And she had said that, over the years, she had kind of let the platform slip a little bit because YouTube, unfortunately, started to demonetize content that was LGBT. Which, so essentially it's very controversial, and YouTube have released statements saying that it was an unfortunate bug in the algorithm, and we don't have any sort of malice towards the LGBT community. It's just that we were trying to make content safer for children, etc., etc. Which, that was 5 years ago, and they haven't fixed it since, or maybe 3 years ago. I don't want to give incorrect numbers. So basically, that meant that any content that was tagged with the word with LGBT or lesbian or bisexual or whatever, it was automatically being paid at a lower click advertising dollar, so a CPM, than anything else. So, rather than making, say, $1 on a video click or whatever, you're making 1 cent, which meant that the company was no longer a viable company. So then that was really hard. So that was, Shireen kind of explained it to me. Shireen is the founder, and I basically said, "Hey, what if I come on board and I look to form some partnerships that make it a viable company again?" Because we obviously have this massive audience. It's 500,000 people that are subscribed and that are active, and the view count on the, we get something like 6 million unique views a month. It's insane. So she was like, "Yes, please, if you're interested, let's do it." And so then I came on board and I partnered OML with Revry, which was an already established queer streaming platform, which is an OTT platform. OTT meaning anything you can, like an Apple TV or a Chrome or a Fire Stick. All those things are over the top devices, and it's an app-based streaming platform. But the cool thing about Revry is that Revry also has a linear aspect, linear being like regular cable. And so when we partnered about a week and a half ago, we launched the first 24/7 live linear channel for queer women, which is, I didn't even know it was the first one. Until about 2 weeks ago, and they were like, "Oh yeah, well, it's the first one." And I was like, Oh man, like I really did something. I didn't realize. Which is cool. I'm so glad to have found a home with the Revry company. These unique streaming platforms that are niche, that are geared towards certain communities, whatever it is the community is. It's so important. Um, so important that there's content that is inclusive, and that people are seeing themselves represented on screen when they click on, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's several things you said were fascinating to me, and I had no idea about that. The controversy with YouTube. That's
Yeah,
messed. That's really really messed up.
it is really messed up. And I think that they've gotten away with it because the community that they've marginalized doesn't necessarily have the money or the wherewithal to fight back. I do know that there are some like there are some court cases that have been filed specifically. I can tell you there was one very successful LGBTQ YouTuber who I spoke to, who made a living making her YouTube videos and
Mhm.
had a huge, and still has a huge following. But she went from making a living as a YouTube artist to not making a living at all. And actually, for a little while, stopped making videos for a community that was so thirsty for it because she had to go and make money elsewhere. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen the shift in, and I'm not shy to talk about it. They're definitely. I think YouTube is fiscally conservative, and but vocally not conservative. So they play both sides of the coin, I think, a little bit.
Interesting. That's yeah. No, I'm still a neophyte when it comes to like understanding what's going on, particularly with YouTube, even with my own channel. That's only started to grow during the pandemic, actually. And so I started looking through the analytics. I started looking through all these other kind of things and people that are monetizing their channels and all that kind of stuff. And I haven't. It feels a little almost like Big Brotherish to me.
Yeah,
How they're like doing things to try to get you. Oh, if you do these things, this is how you can start making money on your channel.
yeah.
But if you do things that we don't somehow approve of, you'll kind of get buried, basically.
Yeah.
Or
So
mis-
there's a bunch of things that you can do. Doing the interviews at the length that you do them is actually really beneficial to you because YouTube likes it. The longer you spend on their platform, and the longer people spend on their platform because of you, they will, reward you by kind of elevating your content. But yeah, you got to do all the stuff. I actually think that it's a wonderful platform. It's just shitty that all of a sudden now there was a real shift. It wasn't like this, and I don't know what happened in the inner workings of the company, but there was a shift, and it is what it is. So now my plan is to hopefully utilize this community that found us and then take them somewhere where, as content creators, we can get paid. That's what I'm hoping, because we're still providing free content. It's just not on YouTube.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and again, I can only use myself as a really small example of if there was a guest that I knew had a really strong following, and I was
Right.
like, I want those fans, even if it's like half of those fans, to come over and watch my interview that I was doing on the Alice tour. Then they'll get exposed to Alice,
Right.
and easier said than done.
Yeah.
I learned that the hard way. I finally made it happen almost. That I got this huge following to start following my stuff, but unfortunately, I was on break during the tour, so I'm like, I can't win. But
Can't catch a break.
yeah, I tried, and I won't give up trying if I'm doing anything else with Alice in the future. But I was like, damn it, I finally made this work. And but yeah, it's you keep pushing and you're trying to push for the right things and the right ways, and um, the fact that you're trying to have that's I mean, when you're talking millions of people that are
Hmm.
watching content and then over 500,000 subscribing, you should be able to get some chunk of that to come over to Reverie or something else to yeah,
Yeah.
enjoy the content.
I really hope so. And it's basically re-educating people that it's the same. When you come to YouTube, you just watch some ads and you get to watch this content for free. It's the same. we're providing the exact same thing. It's just that over there, you're not on YouTube. So
Okay, and as the director of content, are you looking at like all the content then for OML, like what you can be bringing to the channel,
yeah,
or
yeah,
okay?
I'm very picky. I think more than anything, I just want to tell. I want to tell good stories, and I also want. I don't want to. I as someone that grew up really, really craving queer content and not seeing a lot of it, and then when we started moving into the indie world of being able to create stuff, um, I saw a lot of bad content, and it's because LGBT people weren't able to find the funding to make really good content. So there's a long standing understanding that a lot of queer content kind of sucks, and I'm definitely working with younger um, younger filmmakers that are very hungry to make quality content, because there's a lot of us that are sitting here going, no, we know how to make good content, you just have to give us the opportunity to make it. And I think that's a real undercurrent for a lot of artists. There's a lot of people that can write incredible music. There's a lot of people that can create really quality art. It's just about having a platform to propel it. So that's what I'm really hoping to do with OML. I have like one group of content creators created this awesome independent series called Gal Pals. That's kind of like a queer Broad City. And they're so funny and they're so ridiculous, and I love it, and it's so well shot, and this is like filmmakers in Los Angeles using their own equipment in their own apartments, and actors deferring their pay because you all just want to be making something. So I'm definitely really filtering through the content that we put up there, and I'm wanting to put up the best of the best so that people come to the platform and go, wow, this is like, I might as well be on Netflix. But every show has characters that are relatable to me, unlike every show on Netflix. Although I will say Netflix is a very inclusive platform.
Okay, and so where does, and you mentioned there's going to be 10 episodes of Dating in Place.
Yeah.
Do you look? I mean, obviously, this is your show that you have on OML. So, is there ever like a conflict of interest of like you putting your show up and then you're looking at? I'm just kind of curious about how that would work.
I think I actually had a meeting yesterday about content development, and I was talking with the boys at Revry, and they were like, "Well, you could do this show and blah blah blah," and I was like, "Well, no, this particular show that I was pitching, I was like, I'm not going to be in this one," and they were like, "Why not?" I was like, "Because I can't be in every show." And nor do I want to be. I'm not relevant for every show. So I'm definitely aware of that. I think that also, I think it's about the fact that I revel in other artists. Like I was talking about those girls that did Gal Pals. They're so great and they're so funny. So I find myself probably the least amusing out of everybody. So I'm more likely to want to watch other people than watch myself. So I'm going to always be hypercritical about the content that I'm in, and I'm going to want it to be excellent. You know, so yeah, I don't think there's a conflict of interest, mainly because I hold myself to a very high standard.
Okay, yeah, I was just more curious than anything. It's like, okay, when I was looking at your title, and then yeah, obviously you have this wonderful show of your own. I'm kind of like,
It could be a conflict of interest. It could, if I didn't have my personality, maybe it could be.
yeah, if you start getting like a really big head,
Right, exactly.
oh, I have 3 other ideas I want to pitch to you right
Yeah.
now. They all
And
involve me.
I can be the star of all of them. Yeah, no, I'm definitely not that relevant, and I'm not that interesting to be the star of every show on the channel. We would get bored real quick.
Okay, and I'm sure you probably can't give away too much about the future episodes of Dating in Place, but can you kind of talk about maybe in general, like where are the characters headed, or what can you tell us for the first season?
Well, I can tell you that the whole first season kind of plays out in real time of the pandemic. So when we end the first season, we're still in the pandemic. Um, so, and you know, my character Debica lives in Sydney, Australia, and the girl I'm dating, Jo, she lives in San Francisco. So, we still don't know how we're going to see each other or when we're going to see each other by the time it ends. There may be a plan in place. I won't give that away, but um the relationship definitely progresses to the place where these girls are very much a couple,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very much planning their futures together, even though they've still never met in real life, which is awesome. I love it because these two women, like, we literally watch them fall in love, and I accredit a lot of that to the fact that, like, so you and I, we've never met before. We've been talking for an hour
Mm-hmm.
because we have a lot to say. We're relating. And when you hang out with your partner, say, for example, my wife and I, we spend a lot of passive time together. My wife and I do a lot of talking. But, you know, when you're in each other's space, we sometimes take that time for granted, and you watch movies, you do chores and errands, and we stop communicating sometimes. But when you're forced to when the only way you can connect is by talking, you do a lot of talking. So the girls do 10 episodes worth of talking and falling in love, and they know more about each other than I think some married couples might.
Yeah, yeah, you're very right. That's interesting about that aspect of it, about because of the premise and
Mm-hmm.
because they're stuck in this pandemic. Like, well, the rest of us are. It's just more focused in the show. That I was thinking about the scene where your character is packing and getting ready,
Yeah.
and because they didn't know about the news,
Yeah.
but then the character in San Francisco already knew that we're not going to be able to travel right now because of what was just issued, and it's such a real time thing. And you talked about this earlier too, that early on with the pandemic, that there was so much people just going to online trying to find any information they could,
Right.
because there was all kinds of varying levels of quality information out there. But then you have something like in the show where, yeah, she's looking forward to going to Hawaii and all these other kind of things. They got to finally get to meet this person,
Yeah.
and then, oh no, that doesn't happen. And everyone can relate to something like that, where
Yeah.
you're completely let down during this pandemic by something you love to do. It could be your
Yeah.
birthday, going to work, going to whatever, and it's like, oh shit, now I can't do it.
I mean, the reality is that most of us will celebrate a birthday during this pandemic, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, yeah, it definitely, like, and then how do you continue to have relationships? How do you continue to be connected to people? And I think that, like, again, I'm definitely like a glass is half full kind of person, but like, what a gift that we live in a time where we can do this, right?
Hmm.
You know, if the think about the Spanish flu, no one was FaceTiming during the Spanish flu.
No, you're very right, and we talked about that during the pre-show too, about just having this technology, that it's at least you have these avenues,
Yeah.
because otherwise, like, if we didn't have the internet, then you're literally on your phone like old school, trying to
Hmm.
talk to various people, and then trying to figure out, can you figure out how to do a conference call or whatever it is, to
Yeah.
bring grandma onto the line or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh. uh,
Yeah. Where relationships didn't have to break down. We just had to. Human beings have a great ability to adjust and to change and to cope. It's just about being open to it. Once you get used to a different way of communicating or a different way of being, it's like all of a sudden that's people keep saying the phrase the new normal. I hate the word normal, but because I just think normal sounds really boring. But this new normal, I'm completely used to having these kinds of relationships now. I spend so much time on these virtual calls that, like, I I can't imagine going back to what do you mean I have to get in my car and drive down there and then, like, sit in a room with these people? Why? I'm half in my pajamas right now.
Yeah, no, it's it's very true. We were talking about this with some other guests during one of my fun table sessions, about how the average person now, for the most part, has been seeing themselves so much because of this. Because normally
Mm.
I don't sit there and like, oh, my nose is kind of weird, and my ears are wet.
Oh,
But
that's so interesting.
yeah, you can't help but notice it because you're on these calls so much, even if it's just, yeah, for personal reasons, to connect with your family or friends. You keep seeing yourself, which you normally would not, have anywhere the amount of time where you're like staring in a mirror and seeing all these kind of things going on.
I'd never thought about that. I guess I see myself a lot. So that that's so interesting. And I wonder how that's been affecting people and self-esteem, and especially in a
Hmm.
time where potentially we're not taking care of ourselves as well as we would. Like, I don't have any makeup on today. I'm wearing glasses, like, but I think maybe I care a little bit less because I'm used to seeing myself so much.
It could be. And yeah, I think there's going to be a real interesting kind of after effect of this. And so, like, kids doing virtual school, seeing their teacher doing this kind of thing. And yeah, but noticing themselves every day for 5 days a week, for 6 hours a day or whatever it is. It's going to be
How
like,
interesting. And maybe potentially that becomes, maybe that's really dangerous, where all of a sudden we're focusing on ourselves more than the people. Oh,
yeah.
I'm scared now that you've said that. It also like gives me a bunch of ideas for new content. So thank you, Mark.
Yeah, you can have that for free.
Cheers. Cheers. You'll get a thank you for sure.
Yeah, we might have a whole generation of narcissists coming up.
No more, please. No more. If there's one word that I never want to hear again in my life is narcissist. I'm so sick of being surrounded by narcissists.
I hear you. I hear you. One thing I guess to kind of wrap this up, and this has been amazing talking with you guys.
Yeah, I've had a blast, man.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Um, so I ask this of a lot of creative people because I'd like to hear what they have to say, to young people, young creators, young artists that want to get out there and start doing something. And what kind of advice would you give someone who's in that position that wants to start doing like what you do?
I would say be so busy living your life doing whatever it is that you want to do, that you don't notice what people say about it, who's watching, because it doesn't matter. Just if you, whatever it is that drives you, whatever it is that fills your soul, just do it, and don't worry what anybody has to say, and do it to the absolute best of your ability. And then it doesn't matter what the outcome is, because your soul's going to be full anyway.
Amazing. I love those words, and I think it's something that yeah, hopefully people take to heart. And quite honestly, sometimes when I ask that question, it's kind of helps me just kind of refuel myself about, here's what a professional creative is saying, and here's what another one, and another. And when you kind of hear the same things coming from the bulk of people, it's like, okay, stay the course, keep doing
Yeah,
what,
man.
keep
I
doing
also
what you're
I think that we, again, because we've been so trained to function in an economic society, we care about money, and we relate that to success. Money's not success. It's just a vehicle for paying the bills. Success is happiness. And so if whatever it is that really feeds your soul, if you're doing it, you're successful.
Here, here, wonderful. And yes, thank you again for taking the time today. And it was so awesome. People, please watch Dating in Place,
Yes.
um, and check everything else that's going on with OML and also with Reverie. And Captain Blackwood, nice to see you. I'm not trying to ignore you in the chat. I see you've put a couple comments in there. So thank you for watching the interview.
Thank you
Um,
for having me. Hopefully we'll hang out again one day.
Yeah, I will definitely talk to you offline because I do have this thing where I get together with other creatives virtually, of course, and it's like a virtual happy hour kind of thing. And
Cool.
I think you might be a perfect person to join one of these things coming up on. Well, I have one tonight on Friday, so we're on round 15, and I plan on having them go and as long as I need to have them go because it's really
Let
fun.
me know, man. If I'm around and not in the middle of editing, I'll come hang out for sure.
Okay, I'll talk with you offline then. And so in the meantime, stay safe down there.
Thank you.
and
You too.
yeah, have a really good Friday.
You too. See you, Mark.
Bye bye.
Bye.